We established how easy it is to hijack a session. Once the attacker knows the session ID, and we use to reflect a cross-site scripting attack in order for the attacker to get hold of it. But there are other risks which lead to the disclosure of the session ID from a cookie. So for an example, cookies will often be captured in exception logs, and there are many different framework out there, many different tools that aid developers by ensuring that when an unhanded exception occurs in an application, which application prefers as much as application is possible to load, so that the developer can go and review the exception figure out what went wrong. Now unfortunately these logs can contain a session ID. In fact, they can contain multiple different attributes of sensitive data, but the one we're going to look at here is that session ID. Now many vulnerable websites here uses a framework called ELMA, and the error logging modules that handles, and you can come across a exposed ELMA, and many websites that uses that ELMA do unfortunately make the details public. So we'll use the LMR exception log, which is unfortunately exposed on this application, and we can see that here is an on exception with that, and the exception was that invalid column name, and it doesn't really matter what types of exception it was, but there are many different circumstances that can lead to an exception in a web app. The important thing is that we can now drill down into the exception, and when you look at it, we got the internal information data, implementation data, as you can see in this picture. And now one of the things that get disclosed in this internal implementation is that the actual HTTP request, and of course when you have a valid cookie for a site, the cookie gets sent to the request. So from the session ID there will be a log file in the text, and so we don't need to send anyone a malicious link or cause request to go to the attacker website with the session ID. The website was already exposing it. So a great big log of everybody's session ID if they had an active session on the website when an unhanded exception was raised, and then they logged by an ELMA. And now this is a serious problem, because it means that there are just all of those exposed repositories there of active sessions, and with those active session IDs floating around the web. And in fact it's very easy just to search for this, so very carefully crafted Google searches that allow you to specifically find exposed logs, not just from ELMA but from all sorts of different framework as well. And there are a significant number of them out there. They are literally a quick search, and you can just literally a quick search on the web and you can find many of them, including ELMA. But it's not just cookies that are captured here in the request, and in fact if I can think, there is a path. Also there is a path, and there is nothing really sensitive in this path. It's just for make the /1. Sometimes that went wrong in the path. The point is the path has been captured in this implementation data using Elma, and leads us to the discussion about could we possibly leak sensitive data using the path, and that could be used in a session hijacking attack very easily using your path location and get to the session hijacking. So let's go and have a look at what happens with an exception like the raise questions when the session ID is persisted by the URL. So we'll talk about this in this next lecture.